All right, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into The Language Crystal by Lawrence William Lyons. Have you heard of this one?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting read. It's not your typical book. It's got this whole theory about a hidden code within language.
The code.
Yeah, specifically focusing on the letters R and L.
R and L. Okay, I'm intrigued already. Tell me more.
So Lyons thinks these letters, R and L, can actually connect events and concepts that seem like totally unrelated.
Like how? Give me an example.
Well, he starts with this story about John, a 7-year-old dyslexic student. The kid is asked to draw a crown, right? But when he tries to write the word, he spells it I-S-R-A-E-L.
I-S-R-A-E-L.
Instead of C-R-O-W-N.
Yep. Most folks would probably just see that as, a typical spelling error. But Lyons, he sees it as something much deeper.
Deeper how?
Well, he uses it as an example of this hidden language code where R and L sounds can be swapped and potentially reveal hidden meanings.
Whoa, hold on. So he's saying there's like a secret code in language based on R and L. That's what he's suggesting, yeah. He even suggests that dyslexia might not be a learning disability, but a different way of processing language, like a way of accessing these hidden meanings.
So you're saying dyslexia could be like a superpower. That's pretty wild.
Right. It's a fascinating idea. And Lyons doesn't stop there. He explains how R and L sounds are actually interchangeable in a ton of languages.
Like which ones?
Well, you've got Hebrew and Egyptian, even Sanskrit, and, even English.
Huh. Interesting. I never thought about it that way. But how does he prove this?
He gives this example of the word animalis, which is the Latin word for evil.
Let's say MLS equals evil. Got it.
Right. But guess what? MLS is an anagram of Selim, which means apple tree.
Wait a minute. So the word for evil is an anagram of apple tree. Isn't that like straight out of the Bible with Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit?
Exactly. That's precisely Lyons' point. He's saying that this linguistic phenomenon, this R and L connection, has been totally overlooked by, language experts. And if we understood it, it could completely change how we see history and culture.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we've got this R and L connection. What else is in this book?
Well, buckle up, because this is where things get even more interesting. Lyons noticed something super strange about the number 18.
The number 18.
Yeah, the number 18. He observed that a whole bunch of major world events happened on or around the 18th of the month, or, involved the number 18 in some way.
You're kidding. Like what kind of events?
Oh, all sorts. Like Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, for example.
Pearl Harbor. How does that relate to the number 18?
Well, it happened 18 days before Christmas.
Wow.
And then there's the Chernobyl disaster. Lyons claims it actually released 18 tons of anti-Soviet campaign material.
Wow, that's quite a coincidence.
Right. And then there's the Iran-Contra affair, that whole thing with the secret arms dealings.
Yeah, I remember that. What about it?
Well, it went on for 18 months.
Hold on. There's more, isn't there? Didn't something happen with the Challenger space shuttle?
You got it. It launched on the 18th.
Okay, that is a lot of 18s. It's almost like too many to be a coincidence. What does Lyons say about it?
Well, he connects it to this idea of, life existing in two different realms, biological and technological. He's basically saying that there are these hidden connections between seemingly unrelated events, and by understanding them, we can have, a more complete picture of the world.
All right, so we've got the R and L thing, this whole number 18 thing. This is a lot to take in.
I know, right? But hang in there. We're just getting started. Lyons goes on to talk about the word Israel, which in Hebrew actually means struggle with God.
Struggle with God. Interesting.
Yeah. And Lyons sees this as a metaphor for our own struggles, both individually and as, a society. And then he takes this idea and applies it to, you guessed it, the Iran-Contra affair.
The Iran-Contra affair again?
Yep. He starts analyzing the names of the people involved.
He's, breaking down the names. What does he find?
Well, he connects Reagan to struggle with migration. Then there's Casey, which he links to watchful. And then you have North, which he connects to Old Nick, which is, another name for the devil.
Whoa, so he's built a whole linguistic code to understand history, like he's cracked the code of the universe or something.
It's pretty wild, right? Lyons actually suggests that these names, when you combine them with this number 18 and events like Chernobyl, might point to some larger narrative happening behind the scenes.
Okay, this is all very interesting, but I'm still a little lost. What's the takeaway for, the average person? How do we make sense of all this?
Well, one of the most important things Lyons introduces is something called the language crystal code. It's this system where each letter of the alphabet stands for a different concept.
So it's like a secret code.
You could say that. Like, A stands for realization, B stands for two, the idea of things being joined.
Joined, like a bridge.
Exactly. Then you have C for light, D for delta, that curved triangle shape.
And he does this for every letter.
Yep, every single one. And he uses this code to decode historical events, trends, putting a big emphasis on the interplay of light and gravity.
So this isn't just some word game. It's like a framework for how language shapes reality.
That's what he's getting at.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from controversial stuff either. He even dives into medical history and offers his own perspective on AIDS.
AIDS.
Yeah, he challenges the way we usually think about AIDS, as a purely viral disease.
He's not denying the existence of the virus, right?
No, not at all. He's suggesting that maybe, just maybe, by focusing only on the virus, we're missing a bigger piece of the puzzle. Things like emotions, lifestyle, the body's natural defenses. He thinks these things play a big role too.
So he's kind of questioning the mainstream view of AIDS. Interesting. But we're out of time for this part. What else is there to uncover in the language crystal?
Well, we've just scratched the surface. Next time, we'll dive into some of the more controversial parts of the book, like his analysis of the Iran-Contra affair, his thoughts on AIDS, and we'll explore his alternative approach to health and well-being. You won't want to miss it.
All right, so let's jump into some of those controversial areas you mentioned. You said Lyons had some interesting thoughts on the Iran-Contra affair.
It does. Remember how he connects the word Israel, meaning struggle with God, to the idea of personal and collective struggles, like as a society.
Yeah, and how he used that idea to look at the names of the people involved in the Iran-Contra affair. It's like he thinks there's some deeper meaning hidden in the names.
Exactly. He breaks down Reagan as struggle with migration, Casey as like watchful, and then North represents old Nick, like the devil.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And isn't this where that number 18 pops up again? Didn't Lyons say that it was connected to the Iran-Contra affair too, just like with those other historical events?
He did. It's almost like he's saying there's this unseen force orchestrating things based on this number. Not that he explicitly says that, but he definitely thinks these numerical, what do you call them? Synchronicities. Yeah, synchronicities. Yeah. He thinks they're worth paying attention to.
I can see why some folks might find this a little out there, but I got to admit, it's kind of fascinating to think about. So how does all of this connect back to his language crystal code?
Well, Lyons thinks all these things we've talked about, the historical events, the names, the numbers, it's all part of this larger, like, linguistic tapestry. And he believes that by understanding this code, we can start to see those hidden meanings in everything.
So it's more than just word games. It's a way of seeing the world like through a different lens.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting. Remember how Lyons also looks at medical history? Like his perspective on AIDS?
Yeah, he doesn't really buy the whole, AIDS is a purely viral disease thing, does he?
He doesn't. Lyons argues that even the term AIDS might be part of the problem, like a scary label that stops us from truly understanding the condition.
But he's not saying the virus doesn't exist, right?
No, not at all. He's just suggesting that maybe focusing only on the virus means we're missing other important factors like, emotions, lifestyle choices, even the body's natural ability to heal itself.
He goes pretty deep into the medical jargon too, doesn't he? Talking about things like idiopathic edema, which I guess is like swelling for no obvious reason, and aseptic meningitis.
He does. He's really highlighting how complex illness is, and he's kind of critiquing, I think, the way modern medicine relies so heavily on drugs. Lyons is a big believer in natural healing, that the body can often heal itself if you give it the right conditions.
So if we're not supposed to just rely on drugs, what does Lyons suggest we do?
This is where he introduces his idea of phase 3 consciousness.
Right, like human evolution. We started as these like pre-fire instinctual beings. Then we became afraid of fire and got all dependent on technology. And now we're entering this new phase of awareness.
Exactly. And in this new phase, Lyons thinks we need to move past fear, reclaim our individuality, and find a balance between technology and our natural selves.
He even suggests a new dietary law, right? Back to natural, uncooked foods, no more pizza and soda.
Well, according to Lyons, pizza and soda wouldn't exactly be part of the Phase 3 lifestyle. He's a big advocate for raw foods, the idea that cooking disrupts the natural harmony of food. He thinks it's essential for optimal health and even spiritual growth.
That's definitely someone to think about. So where does language fit into all of this?
This is key. Lyons believes language is essential for reaching this new phase of consciousness. He argues that words have this incredible power. They shape our reality and how we perceive the world.
He makes a point about how ancient languages like Sanskrit and Hebrew could hold clues to understanding our true nature and how the universe operates.
That's right. And this ties back into his language crystal code, where each letter represents a different concept, a different energy. Lyons believes that by understanding this code, we can unlock the hidden wisdom within language and gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and, the cosmos.
So it's not just about decoding events or medical terms, it's about reaching a deeper level of consciousness.
Exactly. He's basically calling for a linguistic revolution. A complete shift in how we think so we can move beyond the surface level of words and tap into this transformative power that language holds.
That's a pretty ambitious goal.
It is. But Lyons believes it's necessary if we want to create a future that's more peaceful, more sustainable. He really emphasizes the need to break free from the limitations of our current way of using language and embrace a more holistic way of thinking and speaking.
He uses the example of how we talk about developing economies as if it's always a positive thing, when really a lot of times it means exploiting resources and harming the environment.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how language can be used to hide the truth and perpetuate harmful practices. Lyons wants us to question the words we use, be more mindful of their true meaning.
He even talks about sexuality, which is, often seen as taboo. He points out how the language we use around sex is filled with, shame and secrecy.
He does. He thinks that open and honest communication about sexuality is crucial for healthy relationships and a balanced society. He even explores the origins of words like love and marriage, tracing their evolution through history. It's amazing what you find when you dig into the history of words.
Yeah, it really shows how much meaning is packed into these seemingly simple words we use every day.
Exactly. And Lyons is a master at unpacking those meanings and revealing the hidden depths of language itself.
I think our listeners are probably already overwhelmed with all the stuff we've covered so far.
I bet. The Language Crystal is not your typical book. It's a real head-scratcher, full of challenging and thought-provoking ideas about language, consciousness, what it means to be human.
Not exactly light reading material.
Nope. But for those willing to put in the effort, I think the Language Crystal offers a really unique and potentially transformative perspective.
Before we jump into Lyon's conclusions, there's one last piece of this puzzle I want to discuss.
Oh, what's that?
Well, Lyons noticed that this number 18, the one that keeps popping up, it also shows up in the timing of big scientific breakthroughs and discoveries.
You mean how the Big Bang is estimated to have happened 18 billion years ago?
Exactly. And how mammals first appeared on Earth, 180 million years ago. Even the discovery of quarks, which apparently come in 18 types.
It's like science is reflecting the same patterns found in language and history.
Lyons definitely sees it that way. He sees these numerical connections as proof of a deeper order in the universe, like a cosmic code that connects everything. So what's so special about the number 18?
Lyons links 18 to the very idea of life. He points out that water, which is, crucial for all life forms, has a molecular weight of 18, and our bodies are made up of something like 18% carbon.
And he even makes a connection between the 18th chapter of the Bible, the one about Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, and the ecological crisis we're facing today. It's like a warning that we're making the same mistakes and could face similar consequences.
Yeah, it's a pretty dire message. But Lyons also believes we have the power to change things, to learn from the past and create a better future.
And he thinks the key is understanding his language crystal code.
Yes. He believes that by understanding those hidden meanings within language, we can tap into our true potential as humans and create a more harmonious, fulfilling future.
Okay, so we've established that Lyons sees these patterns in language, history, even science. But what does it all mean for us? How can we use these ideas in our own lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Lyons argues that we're at this critical point in human evolution where we need to, shift our consciousness and embrace a new way of being.
He calls it phase 3 thinking, right?
Exactly. And he gives us this whole roadmap for how to achieve this shift, which involves, rethinking how we use language, taking a more holistic approach to health, and connecting with our true nature as biological and spiritual beings.
So no more late night pizza and Netflix binges.
Well, if you're following Lyon's Phase 3 lifestyle, those wouldn't exactly be top priorities. He's all about a more natural, intuitive way of life, one that's in tune with nature's rhythms and the wisdom of our bodies.
He even says we need to develop a whole new language, right? One that's free from the limitations of how we think and talk now.
You got it. He believes our current ways of using language are often rooted in fear, duality, separation. He wants us to create a language that reflects the interconnectedness of everything.
That's a pretty tall order. Where do we even begin?
Lyon suggests we start by paying more attention to the words we use. Think about the hidden meanings, the assumptions built into language. He also recommends checking out ancient languages, wisdom traditions, things like that. He thinks they can give us valuable insights into the nature of reality.
So it's about more than just changing our vocabulary. It's about changing our whole worldview.
Exactly. It's about seeing the world in a new way, thinking in a new way, being in a new way, one that's based on, awareness, compassion, and understanding the interconnectedness of everything.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from Lyon's analysis of historical events, to his critique of modern medicine, to Phase 3 consciousness, and even this call for a new language paradigm. It's a lot to unpack.
And of course, his belief that we can kind of redeem ourselves by understanding and using his language crystal code.
That's right. But before we wrap up, there's one last point we need to touch on.
What's that?
The importance of personal experience.
What do you mean?
Well, throughout the book, Lyons keeps saying that the language crystal code isn't just some, abstract theory. He says it's a living system that you can experience and validate through, direct observation and personal exploration.
So it's not just about reading the book and memorizing the code. It's about actually using it in your life and seeing if it works.
Exactly. Lyons encourages people to experiment with the code, play with language, see if they notice any patterns in their own lives, and come to their own conclusions.
That's a pretty empowering message.
It is, and I think it's really important for anyone who's interested in exploring these ideas.
So what's the big takeaway here?
I think the language crystal is it's a tough book. It's not for everyone, and some of the ideas are pretty out there, even controversial. But I think at its heart, it's a call to be more aware, to understand ourselves and the world around us better, and to live in a way that's more conscious, more compassionate.
And Lyons believes that language is the key to all of that.
Yes, he believes that words are incredibly powerful, and that by understanding the hidden codes within language, we can unlock our full potential and create a better future.
Well, I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure our listeners have a lot to think about.
Definitely. But remember, this is just the beginning. The real journey starts when you start exploring these ideas yourself.
So, pick up a copy of the Language Crystal, play around with the code, and see where it takes you. Now, let's wrap up our deep dive with a look at some of the key takeaways from the Language Crystal and what it all means for us. So we spent 2 whole episodes talking about Lyon's The Language Crystal. But is there really anything to it? Is there actually this secret code in language that unlocks all these universal mysteries?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Lyons makes some pretty interesting connections, but at the end of the day, it's up to each person to decide if they buy it or not.
I mean, some of his ideas are really wild,
Yeah.
the way he ties that number 18 to everything, from Pearl Harbor to the Challenger explosion. It's hard to just dismiss it as coincidence.
I know. And it's not just historical events. He connects it to scientific stuff, too, like the Big Bang, when mammals appeared on Earth, even the molecular weight of water. It's like he's saying this number is woven into the very fabric of reality.
But then there are parts that are a bit harder to swallow, like his analysis of the Iran-Contra thing, where he's breaking down people's names using his code. It almost feels like he's bending things to fit his theory.
Right, and his whole take on AIDS, where he's questioning the traditional view of the disease, that's definitely going to raise some eyebrows. He's basically saying that we might be too focused on the virus and missing the bigger picture, that our emotions, even the words we use, can impact our health.
It's definitely a pretty radical idea, but it does make you think about the connection between mind and body,
Mm.
So, after all of this, what are your biggest takeaways from the Language Crystal?
Honestly, I think Lyons is really onto something with this emphasis on the power of language. We use words all the time without really thinking about them, but they have a huge influence on how we see the world and how we act. And his language crystal code, where each letter represents a different concept, it might not be some literal key to the universe, but it definitely makes you pay closer attention to the little nuances of language.
So it's more about encouraging a different way of thinking, being more aware of the words we use.
Exactly. And it connects to his idea of phase three thinking, where we move beyond fear and see things more holistically. It's like he's advocating for a conscious evolution in how we use language, a shift that could help us create a more peaceful and sustainable future.
That's a pretty big goal, but it's a worthy one, right?
Yeah.
So what do we do with all of this? Where do we go from here?
The best thing anyone can do is dive into the language crystal themselves. Explore Lyon's ideas, play around with his code, see what you find. You might be surprised at what you uncover.
Good advice. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the language crystal, let's leave you with one final thought. If language is as powerful as Lyons suggests, what words or phrases are you using that might be shaping your reality in ways you haven't even noticed? It's something to consider, right?
Definitely. Because if we're not choosing our words carefully, they might be choosing us.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the language crystal. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these ideas with us. Keep those minds open and keep exploring. Until next time.